Welcome everyone. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and pay respect to the elders past, present, and emerging. This is Michelle Belgiorno's first exhibition at Atrium, although we've been talking to each other for the last couple of years. But obviously with COVID, we have keep postponing our exhibitions, but finally we're here. But at the same time, it gives Michelle 2 years to work on a new body of work. So, and including that installation there, that was basically hung at the incinerator. It's part of the exhibition run by the Ruby Council. And I remember Michelle and I organized to go and see it one day, but then after it opened, 2 days later, it closed because of the COVID lockdown. And so we decided, well, we've got to show it here, because not many people have seen it. And to have this conversation with Michelle, we have Katrina Cashman. Katrina is the senior curator with the National Art School and previously with the Mossman Gallery. And she's known Michelle for a long time, know of her work and so on. So she's in the best position to have this discussion with Michelle. So I'd like you to welcome both of them.
Thank you so much, Simon, and thank you to everybody for coming here today. And I also would like to pay my respects, deepest respects, to all Aboriginal people present, to the traditional owners of the land that we're meeting on today, and of course always will be Aboriginal land. And I'm sure I speak for Michelle in making that acknowledgement. So Michelle, I'm actually just going to get a bit more comfortable, excuse me, so I can look at you. Michelle, the title, here we are today, Shinrin Yoku, such a beautiful, evocative title. Can everyone hear me properly? When I think of that word, Shinrin Yoku, it immediately kind of transports me to the beautiful forest of bamboo in Arashiyama, just outside of Kyoto, and that sensory experience of going inside that forest, like so many other tourists and like so many other people posting on Instagram. I was just one of many, many people that day, but I just remember the immediate sensory experience of being immersed in that incredible space, the kind of heavenly feeling of walking into a dark and cool forest environment, then looking up at dappled light, looking up at the change of colour in this one particular space. I'm not sure if you've been there, Michelle, but what does this title mean for you?
So the literal translation is forest bathing, but it's really nature therapy, I think is a better translation. And I have spent a lot of time in Japan, so when I came across the term, I applied it to this collection or this body of artwork after the event. During COVID, so we had the 2.5 years virtually a lockdown, I spent a lot of time walking in the Australian bush. I couldn't go to Japan. I have a long history of going back and forth to Japan, but I couldn't go to Japan, so I spent a lot of time walking in the Australian bush. It was a way to keep physically fit, mentally calm, and also to be able to connect with friends. You could walk with one other person, and it was my form of therapy. And this body of work arose out of all that time I spent in the bush, walking and drawing, and then we spent a lot of time, my husband and I have a sailing boat up at Cowan Creek in the Katrina National Park, and again I spent a lot of time sketching up there and walking in the bush, sitting on my paddleboard, so on the water level, looking up. So I think nature therapy is what helped me through all that uncertainty and stress of COVID. So it was a title applied to the work after the show. But I have spent a lot of time in Japanese forests as well, and they are beautiful, quite different. I think Australian bush is very messy by comparison, very untidy.
I love that kind of notion that you're talking about there, about the tidiness and talking about therapy. And I guess I was also thinking of, what is a Western equivalence? Not that that's a necessarily thing that we need to think of all the time, but what is the Western equivalence of that notion of Shinrin Yoku? And the best I could come up with is the saying, come to your senses. When we're stressed or we need time out, people talk about oh, come to your senses, get with it, but really what it actually means is go to your senses, go to nature, be at the beach, feel the sand on your feet, feel the sunshine, smell the sea air, feel the water, and
smell
that's
the eucalyptus, the rotting vegetation.
It's all of those things about sensory awakening that connects us to nature. And I think that's a really beautiful part of this exhibition. And congratulations first of all. But what a wonderful amount of work you've got here in such incredible quality. I think the thing that I'm so attracted to and that I love most about the work is the duality in it, and the kind of dark, the weight, and the lightness. And of course, it's got that strong Japanese aesthetic. You think about the kakemono, which is the kind of vertical calligraphic screens. You think about the byobu, the folding screens. Think about kind of golden bathed light that your work has. It's kind of infused with this golden kind of sense of God. And I'm assuming that's an underpaint. I don't know if it's burnt sienna or what you do, but would you like to talk a little bit about the technique behind the work? Because there's some interesting parts to that.
So I'm an oil painter. I've tried acrylic, it just doesn't work for me. I think as Katrina has alluded to, so the first thing is, as I mentioned, Australian bush is often very untidy. There's a lot of dead material that provides the beginning of new life, which is a wonderful part of the cyclical nature of it. But it's very dense, and the early paintings that I started with were quite dark and quite dense, and like the first large one here on my right. And I just felt that I wanted to open them up a little bit, let them breathe, and so I actually started looking at the Japanese traditional painting methods and how they would focus on one thing of interest to the artist, I guess, and minimise and get rid of all unnecessary information. So I adopted that in some of the paintings, but as I say, I'm an oil painter. I think a lot of those Japanese screens were done on silk with traditional materials. So I also like a textual quality of a painting. I like layers and a bit of, what do you call it, almost a 3D texture. So a lot of these, they're all painted on linen, but I prepared the canvas. So I put on a couple of layers of gesso, and then I would prepare it with a moulding paste, and I would sometimes actually imprint into the moulding paste. I don't want to give away all my secrets here. Anyway, it doesn't matter, you can try it. I'd imprint into the moulding paste because it would create accidents. And then I would often do a layer of ink that gives that sort of glow. And then on top of the ink, I would start painting with oils. And then some of it's sort of done with a bit of printing. I would put the paint on and lift it off. I play with accidents, and if it doesn't work, the beautiful thing about oil is that you can correct if something's not working. So if for whatever reason I didn't like something, I could paint over it in a titanium white and block something out. But I don't like to use white. It doesn't. It's not very easy to use. So a lot of the transparency actually is achieved by the ink first layer, and then I build up on that.
I think just looking at the work, you also get that sense, apart from weightlessness and dark and light, you get the macro and the micro. So you've got the really beautiful focus on small details, such as the small wall over here, where you also play with kind of growth and regeneration. So some of the imagery comes out of bushfires and kind of burnt surrounds, and then some of the images are very much about regeneration and that kind of hope of hope of a beautiful future landscape to come. What I love about those vertical pieces is that direct relationship with the kind of calligraphic nature of the compositional placement, where you're essentially going water, rock, earth, sky, and zigzagging your kind of composition straight through with these beautiful passages, and as you say, opening up space and creating that kind of contemplative space. So I think that's one of the things that is particularly beautiful about your work. But on this back wall here, I immediately was transported back to some of your earlier work, particularly the work that you did around mythologies. Ovid, the Iliad, the Odyssey. Do you want to talk a little bit about those works and how they've been formed, how your kind of visual language was developed? I see so many relationships, particularly in the use of the rock form and the kind of burnt out tree shape, which looks almost bodily.
That's interesting. So Katrina, being a curator, has a very perceptive eye, I think, and it's very interesting what you say. So yes, I had 2 exhibitions after I left the National Art School, where I had taken, he's my husband who's just come from the sailing regatta. So after I left the National Art School, where I had taken an elective in mythology, classical mythology, and I just loved it. It opened up a whole new world of narrative and possibilities of interpretation. So I had one exhibition based on the Iliad and the Odyssey, and a second one based on Ovid's Metamorphosis. And these tales are so postmodern that you can interpret them in any way that is relevant for the times. And one of the things that really captured my imagination in those mythological stories, both Japanese mythology, in fact the founding story of Japan, and the Western mythology, is the concept of the cave, the dark space, and what comes out of that darkness. And so I live on the rocks of Sydney Harbour, and we spent a lot of time, as I said, up in the Katrina National Park during the COVID lockdown. And the sandstone is so beautiful and so dramatic, and especially when you're looking up at these huge cliffs. And then you get these sort of dark, shadowy crevices. And then this little bit of, life bursts forth and is so tenacious, the way our angophora trees in particular will grow out of rock and very little soil. So, so the caves and the rocks, and then these ones here, which are sort of my attempt at abstraction. I'm a figurative painter. In fact, I'm so delighted here that my painting career began at the Julie National Art School back in the early 1990s. And I spent 3 years there learning how to look and draw, observational drawing, and then oil painting, how to apply oil paint. And so some of my teachers from way back then are here today. That's absolutely lovely. And then I had a long period of time in between. So then I had a studio for 4 years in King's Cross, where I did a lot of figurative work based on the people of the cross. And then I went to the National Art School and sort of consolidated all this learning that I picked up along the way. So these ones are a little bit more abstract. I was playing with the burnt out tree trunks that you find so often in the Australian bush. For some reason they captured my imagination, again because of that sense of hope that Katrina mentioned, that new life comes out of old rotten material. These tree trunks provide a home for so many creatures that we don't even notice unless you take the time to stop and look. And they were quite totemic or iconic. And then from there I actually started to play around with the clay forms. And I'm just an amateur with clay, but it's something I'd actually like to spend a bit more time working on. These again are sort of based on the sort of rough, just a rough interpretation of these burnt out tree trunks.
Thank you, Michelle, and that's, I think one of the things that you've just started talking about is that's so clear in this exhibition for me, and I'm sure for other people, is that sense of the cross-cultural connection. We can see these references to Japan, but we can see very much your own visual language that's distinctly Australian, and that lovely golden light that's shining through, and that way you've captured our landscape, which is, absolutely beautiful, and it's great to see that language in your work. But I'd like to just go back to the very first connections with Japan, because I know this story, but I'm sure a lot of people here would be very interested to find out. We're talking more than 30 years. Is it more than 40 years of a very deep connection with Japan? And I understand you first started as an exchange student, but one of the things you do talk about is the inscrutable nature of Japanese culture. So tell us what you found over the years.
So when I was 17, I'd finished high school, and I already loved art. It was my favourite subject at school, and I'd actually been accepted into NIDA to do the set and costume design course. but I applied for a scholarship to Japan because Japanese theatre was so different from anything we had here, and I got the scholarship and spent a year in Tokyo, and with the intention of, I went to high school there again and put me back into school, which wasn't so fun, but I used to skip school a lot and go to the theatre. So I'd go to Noi Theatre and Kabuki Theatre and Bunraku Theatre. And then I came back to Australia and I did a year at NIDA, and it was a very dysfunctional institution at the time, and 5 of the 6 design students left after a year. And my parents, being migrants, were very keen that I go to university and get an education that I could fall back on. So I ended up going to university and studying Japanese for 4 years, and economics actually. So a bit of the left and the right brain. And then I worked for 10 years for a Japanese company. Then we had a family, and I ended up pulling out of the full-time workforce and sort of let go of Japan for a long time. You know, I was deeply embedded in Australian life. And then when I decided to take up, or develop my art practice over time, I thought, I love Japan, and I love the culture, and it is inscrutable. I mean, the more you learn, the more you realise you know nothing. So I took up Japanese lessons again in 2011. I started a Japanese lesson once a week. I was fluent, back in when I was in my 20s, I was a translator, but started the lessons again and then decided to go to Japan, and went back and forth for many years until COVID, really. I'm getting a bit lost here. But so I love Japan, I love its culture. I think it is, it's a homogenous culture. We're from a multi-culture. I'm a child of migrants, my husband's a child of different migrant, different country migrants. And so, to learn from a different culture, I think is fascinating, and to open your mind into different perspectives of life. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we can see in your work, that kind of the minimalist, kind of pared back, kind of that sense of peace that sits in the work, that takes you straight to kind of Buddhist philosophy.
Yeah, Buddhism.
That life is fleeting, that nature is eternal, nature is everything. I think that the cultural practices that you would have engaged with in that would have informed your kind of sense of developing sense as a person, as a woman, as an artist from such a young age is just such a wonderful impact. But I just want to talk about one of the projects that Michelle and I worked on together. We had actually we've worked on, I think we've worked on 3 so far. The first was an exhibition of women artists in Boston called 10 by 10.
It was my first opportunity. Was actually created by Katrina in 2003, 4.
Was it 3 or 4? I thought it was a bit later. Okay, I need to check my own CV. But so that was a great exhibition that Michelle really stood out as, I guess, one of the artists that we would have put in the emerging category at that time. And then soon after, you had a solo show at Mosman called The Art of Tea, which was small work. It was collage based. It was very figurative, still life. It was really stunning. But I think the next kind of big push in terms of career, and I'm just going to brag a tiny bit, there's some of the artists in the crowd here are Sue Pedley and Kay Ikeda.
Put your hands up.
With your hands up. It's great to see you here. But a project that we did in 2017 called Tokatai, and it was a commissioned project of Australian artists and Japanese artists looking at a particular story in Mosman. Mosman, of course, was the site of one side of the net that went across Sydney Harbour with the midget submarines in World War II. So it was an incredible opportunity to have this exhibition literally at the part of the foreshore in these incredible oil tanks. They're there at the moment. You might have seen them. Other exhibitions have been staged there, but Tokatai was 2017, and I think it really pushed you in a very new direction in your practice, because it was really installation-based work and also community-engaged practices. So that was quite a big step outside your field of work, where you had your beautiful studio in Mosman, being able to create work or just follow your own path, but this really set you up in a different direction. Do you want to tell us a bit about that work? And also it will lead into the work that Simon's already mentioned. So tell us about your project for Tokatai.
So that was a wonderful opportunity by the Mossman Art Gallery, and so it was commemorating 75 years since the Japanese attack on Sydney Harbour in 1942. 3 submarines came in, and it was an open opportunity to create a work, but it was going to be an installation. So I decided to, it's a long story, but so there were 3 submarines that came into Sydney Harbour, and one of them came into Mossman Bay, Taylor's Bay in Mossman, and the submarine was attacked, and the submariners committed suicide. The submarine was raised, and the submariners were wearing these traditional Japanese obi, which is a wide belt, and these were given to Japanese soldiers before they left for war by their women, by their mothers, by the women in their communities. They were stitched with, typically, they're called senmin bari, so 1,000 person belt. And they were stitched with 1,000 stitches, and often a lucky coin was attached, maybe some hair of their loved one. So a very emotional gift given. I guess the idea was that this is, where the hara, the centre of the person is, and it's going to protect you and wish them luck to come back safely. So I decided to take that as an emblem of the war, and I went to Japan. I got a residency in Tokyo. It was an open studio right in the centre of Tokyo, so people would come in and I would engage with people, and then I had workshops as well in old people's homes. A friend of mine helped, her father was in an old people's home, workshops with friends of mine from high school that I was still in contact with. So asking women to stitch either one stitch or 10 or 100, and some image from their memories or their experiences of the war. And I gathered 75 belts commemorating that 75 years, both from Japanese women and also Australian women. So it was a huge organisational task to get these. I had to make the belts, and then I had to hand them out and engage with the women. And then we hung it in these tanks, which were built during the war to hold oil for the supply, all our ships, and they were camouflaged on top. So it was a wonderful opportunity, and Kay, who's here, did a beautiful dance performance, and Sue Pedley up the back there did a wonderful installation as well. So it was a great breakthrough for me. And then in 2019, so when I moved on to another installation, I thought I could do another one of these. My husband thought I was absolutely crazy. But we had a lot of refugees coming in from Syria and Iraq during the war and after the war. There was a lot of negative commentary in the media, and as a child of migrant, as I say, migrant parents, I felt I had to kind of understand a little bit more. And so through a connection with the Mossman Art Gallery, I engaged with the Casula Powerhouse in Liverpool, which is, Migrant Central in Sydney, and initiated a project called the Song Tree. And I thought all women from all around the world sing to their children or have had songs sung to them when they're young by their mothers, their grandmothers, their aunts, their sisters. So I thought the song, song and music is an important part of our culture. And I asked them to stitch an image onto these leaves that I prepared of a song from their childhood or of significance from, their childhood. And so the images are predominantly about nature, which is interesting, and that's why I thought it would be quite a nice combination with this exhibition. I think intrinsically we're all, deeply connected to nature, and that's something that I think as women we pass on to children and to the next generation. So there's flowers and trees and skies and birds and stars, and so yes, that was the idea. And then during COVID, commentary about China, and I thought, well, here's an opportunity to work with the Willoughby community, a lot of Asian migrants in Willoughby, and I had an opportunity to exhibit the work again in the incinerator, so I got together with groups from the, what was it called, anyway, it was in Chatswood, it was a Mosaic Community Centre, that's right, and they had groups of different migrants come in, so I worked with them and added on another 20 odd leaves, and so that's the story behind that. So I love that community engagement. It's not high art, but it's where people can share stories while they're stitching, and then you get something beautiful and colourful that casts beautiful shadows as well.
I think, you know, relational aesthetics and community-based practices are absolutely flourishing in the contemporary art world at the moment. You've only got to look at the MCA and their huge program at C3 West. Almost every arts organisation I know is doing community-based projects at the moment. So I think, you know, it's really fantastic to get on board, and I guess it satisfies two parts of your personality. You've got the ability to, you know, have that time on your own and really connect immediately with other work, and then to work with other people. I think it's also quite a brave thing to do, because, you know, if you think about trauma-informed care, you know, and in terms of the diasporic nature of a lot of our community, you know, we have to really take a lot of care. So I'm sure you're very involved in that side of things as well, which is great. I was thinking about an analogy that you made last week about the pyramid of the art world and the ecology of the art world and where individuals sit in the art world. And Michelle was kind enough to speak with a lot of NAS students as one of our lunchtime lectures for students last week. Was it last week or the week before? But I really loved your take on how it feels to be a woman artist, of your level of development, where you sit in terms of the art ecology, and the fact that so many students were so keen and so engaged and looking to you as a leader in terms of, and for inspiration. And I just wondered, what does that feel like? Does it feel like a great weight of responsibility when you've got, you know, artists coming through looking up to you in that manner? Or does it just feel like a lovely kind of icing on the cake?
I've often looked at older women and, you know, who have forged a path ahead, and think, I mean, the beautiful thing about art is you can do it till the day you die, really. And even if you're blind, you can still sort of feel your way around with clay or whatever. So I think, and I don't think that desire to create ever goes. I've never really thought of myself as an inspiration to others, but it...
You evidently are. The proof's there.
I don't know, what do I say? I mean, I just think you just do. You just keep doing, and you know, look, I look here, you know, the people that have come today who I've met along that amazingly long and winding journey to, you know, getting to where I am today, and it's been great. I love hanging out with artists and being inspired by them and sharing your frustrations and your lack of confidence in what you do. I mean, it's a terrible thing to exhibit your work, let me tell you. You work in your studio alone, you're in your own mental space, looking inward really to try and find meaning, and then you create all this work and then you've got to show it, because otherwise it just piles up in your studio, and what do you do with it? So then you go through this trauma for, you know, the six or 8 weeks before you actually exhibit. Oh my God, they'll think I'm a complete dud. What am I doing? And you know, look, the truth of the matter is, you know, Katrina mentioned the pyramid, and in fact it's thanks to a conversation I had with Paula Lavasvalia, who's here today, and her partner is an artist. And I remember asking him one day, you know, I'm just going to be in the middle of this huge complex ecology, you know, what's the point of it? And he said, because it's a pyramid, and we need people at the base, we need people in the middle, and there'll be a few people that will rise to the top, but those ones can't get to the top without a good solid base. So everybody's got a role to play. We all nurture each other. We create opportunities for each other. Katrina's created opportunities for me, and you know, thank you very much. I think it's, it is a complex ecosystem. It's not always pretty. I've said that many a time. It's, there's a lot of politics. There's a lot of perhaps people in it for not necessarily the right reasons, whatever they may be. But that's what makes a vibrant ecology. Is variety.
Well, I think I can speak for all of us, Michelle, and particularly for me. When you say I've created opportunities for me, I haven't done that. You've done it. You've done it for yourself because of your work, and your work speaks for itself. But I think now might be a great time to open up to questions. But before we do, I just think a round of applause for Michelle Belgiorno. Any questions?
Okay,
How
I'll
come
ask.
acrylic doesn't
What
work?
inspires you the most?
How come acrylic doesn't work for you?
Okay, it looks like we have two questions. First of all, we have what inspires you most? And second question is, why doesn't acrylic work for you?
Okay, what inspires me? Curiosity, I guess. Curiosity, you start. So I've never been a landscape artist, and but I was, stuck here like everybody in lockdown, and so I started walking, and then I started looking more closely, and I started drawing, and I had time, and I am involved in an organisation called the Australian Wildlife Conservancy, so I do value, the preservation of nature, and I think it's really important for the well-being of people, especially in an urban environment. But I think it's curiosity is what inspires me. I just start down a path and then I go down this rabbit hole and exhausted, and then almost once I've completed this body of work, I'm not sure where I'm going to go next, but I'm sure something, curiosity killed the cat sort of thing. Why I don't like using acrylics? I have tried. I think first my experience is that they dry, the colours dry different from how you apply them. They dry very quickly, and so I can't work it, I can't play with it. Once it's down, it dries. I did learn oil painting first, and so I love the transparency that can be achieved with it. That's about it, really. That's the reasons. I mean, I love watercolour, but I'm not a good enough artist to get it right the first time, and so oils allow me the ability to get some transparency, but also to be able to go back and rework.
Do you work only from your sketches, or like when you've done the sketch and you take it back into your studio, do you have photos and sketches and the whole caboodle? Yeah.
So I don't paint from one photo. I have sketches and lots of photos, and then I'll draw, and I don't do these drawings into a book. I just draw on pieces of paper, sometimes small, sometimes large. I'll work out my composition, looking at lots of different images and focusing on what it is that I want to say. I like to say, I like to have some sort of narrative in my work, and then I will paint it. Sometimes I'll do my composition using collage. I'll tear up paper and create a composition using collage, and then that'll help me I can move things around easily and solve the problems. So Marina here, who asked the question, goes back a long way. She was my model. I have one of my first portraits was actually of Marina, and we both have Hungarian heritage, so that's the other little connection there.
And we both love Japan.
And we both love Japan.
Looks like we've got one last question before we wrap up.
I'm just curious, to what degree you use your imagination in your work? Sort of surveying the gamut of what you've done here, there seems to be quite a sort of a range in terms of,
Style.
Well, in terms of how you compose the work and to some degree, I'm just wondering, because it's rooted in what's realistic, there's also another level of maybe some fantasy or imagination. I'm not sure. So just wanted to, ask you about that.
I like movement in my work. And I think there is, yes, I sort of take from reality. I'm not an abstract artist. I've realised that as much as I've tried over the years. So things are rooted in reality, but then I like to take it a step away. And I suppose that's where a bit of the imagination comes in, and letting go of reality and moving into something that's a little bit more poetic, perhaps, or a bit more expressive of what it is I'm trying to say. So, for example, there's a work over there based on the grass trees that came back with great vigour after the fires. I just love the grass trees. And it's sort of, it's kind of like they're dancing, because I do see them as dancing. They've got these great forms. And then these works that are kind of more oriental in their composition and style. So the large one, in fact, I've hidden, it's a bit like Where's Wally, I've hidden quite a few animals in there. Because, they're the things that I love, but you don't want to paint a kangaroo. And, so they're sort of in there, but not, yes.
Through your imagination.
Yes, I have.
And there's a sense of the spirit of the trees and living an aliveness about a certain degree. It's not, for me, it doesn't feel like just, you're composing and just, arranging shapes. It's just, there seems to be a lot, there's more spirit in it.
Yes, yes. So yes, I do like to have a bit of a story in my work. So I'm a narrative painter, I guess.
I think that really comes through in the kind of sense of deep time that's in these geological rock forms, and then through just kind of liveliness of the moment, the lighter work that captures the senses of the day, whether it's wind or sound or air, light touch of that moment. But I think now might be a good time to take the time to thank Michelle once again. I'm sure that Michelle would love to answer any more questions over, glass of water, etc. But thank you everyone for being here. Again, it's been a real privilege to hear from you, Michelle, and a great pleasure to have this opportunity to talk. Thank you, Simon.
Thanks, Katrina. Thank you everyone again. So feel free to have a private conversation with both of them and enjoy the exhibition. Have a look around. Thank you.